How long can we have such a mass of American military hardware in the theater and have Iran in this crouched position before something bad happens?
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I don't know how long. How long can U.S. forces stay on, on point, on alert? I think fairly long as we need them to. But what Hochstein was saying there is that, and I worked with him in the previous administration, he was saying that every day that we have the Iranians poised to make an attack is a day where the risk of real escalation and all-out war, a full, multiple front war in Israel increases. And what I heard when I was in Israel in June from the retired Israeli Defense Forces commanders, the IDF commanders, was that if an attack came from the north, from Hezbollah, that the likely problem for them would be that the Iron Dome, that the existing defenses would not be able to protect the Israeli citizens, and so that some of these missiles would go as far as Tel Aviv. And that's to say nothing of what Iran has in store. And most of the people in the Pentagon, I was there last week, they don't expect anything worse than the strikes that Iran launched against Israel last April. But that's, they don't really know actually what's going to happen. So we're at a very dangerous moment in time, and negotiations, as you know, appear stalled. And that is what Hezbollah is looking for in order to, and Iran, frankly, as an excuse maybe, to halt further escalation. They want to see peace. They want to see an agreement.
Well, this is exactly what we were discussing on this program yesterday with Aaron David Miller of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. This is what he told us, Evelyn, and then we'll have you respond.
That Israeli-Lebanese border is not going to stabilize or de-escalate unless you can get an Israeli-Hamas agreement. And right now, even though Middle East negotiations traditionally have two speeds, slow and slower, this one does not look good. That's the real problem here. At some point, the Iranians and Hezbollah are going to respond. The only hope to avert a major escalation is a ceasefire deal, and I just don't see it coming together right now.
And Evelyn, considering Hamas isn't even going to be at the table in Qatar tomorrow, do you see one coming together?
I see very slim likelihood for that, Kailey. I mean, first of all, as you said, Hamas won't be at the table. Hamas is now also led by Yahya Sinwar, who was the architect of the October attack on Israel, because, of course, the Israelis assassinated the negotiator, the political leader, recently in Iran. And frankly, the situation looks as bad when you look at Israel, because you have the far right cabinet minister, Ben-Gvir, basically declaring another, legalizing, which is not an international law term. It's just in Israeli parlance and in the domestic context, saying that we're going to take more territory from the Palestinians in the West Bank, which is another part of Israel that can become inflamed. So we're talking Gaza in the south, we're talking in the north, the conflict with Hezbollah, and the more pressure these far-right politicians put on the West Bank. And also, I should note that he went, this far-right leader went to the holy sacred site of the Muslims, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. This is off limits, and even Netanyahu basically rebuked him. But these far-right politicians in Israel are also trying to stop any ceasefire, any hostage exchange. And frankly, if you believe that these hostages should be rescued, you should be infuriated at what's going on right now on the Israeli side as well.
Well, Evelyn, as the Pentagon invests itself in defending Israel here against a possible attack, another one by Iran, they're also watching what's happening at an incredible moment right now in Ukraine. And I'd like to ask you for your thoughts on this, as you have spent so much time in Ukraine and covering the situation there. Rebecca Grant, a senior fellow at the Lexington Institute, spent some time with us a little bit earlier as Ukraine continues this cross-border incursion into the Kursk region of Russia. Russia had to shoot down over 100 drones last night. And we talked about Ukraine's goal in this offensive, now almost 2 weeks old. Evelyn, here's what she said.
Ukraine, with this surprise flank attack, has really opened up a new chapter. It shows that Ukraine's forces have been very well trained by several NATO partners, and they're really very, very capable. The question now is, are they going for a particular objective? Will they then consolidate, or at some point will they pull back?
What's your thought on this, Evelyn, in terms of an objective? Is this a fleeting moment to boost morale in Ukraine, or can they get a foothold here?
I mean, Joe, I can't say for sure. It's interesting because I also had a chance to talk to Pentagon officials about this current situation. And they were really kind of funny. They said, we weren't told ahead of time. They had real operational security here, and they don't know. I think that Zelensky probably has multiple objectives in mind and, has the flexibility. Clearly, his command is unified. They're working in a really concerted fashion. And if it looks like they need to withdraw, they will withdraw. It still will be a victory for them because as President Zelensky has pointed out, he's got some prisoners he can swap. The Ukrainians have shown that they can take advantage of the Russians. They can take the offensive. And, as your analyst before said, they are conducting, serious, concerted, organized military operations. So, I think that it's unclear exactly what they're going to get out of this, but I think the Ukrainians are hedging their bets. They may have to negotiate at some point. They may want to negotiate. Russia is probably not likely to negotiate until after the U.S. elections, though.
Well, so, Evelyn, I guess it raises the broader question for me of whether or not this incursion from Ukraine prolongs the war or brings it closer to its end.
I think at this point, again, it's unclear. However, if they use these positions to continue to take out airfields and air defense and sort of real serious Russian capabilities, and I suppose potentially they can also impact, Russian morale. Clearly, civilians are fleeing their towns. It could start a dynamic that ultimately leads to the Russians being forced to the negotiating table, but I don't expect that overnight. And so I think it's probably more, Kailey, on the, hasten us to peace side of the equation than delay, because the stalemate was delaying us.